Impact from 1949 was an enjoyable crime murder mystery film starring Brian Donlevy, Ella Raines, Charles Coburn, and Helen Walker. Now, I'll admit, I only found out about this film from looking up the filmography of Helen Walker, who was an actress in my last review, Nightmare Alley. And I really liked her performance in that film as a shrewd, analytical psychiatrist character. And I was actually just curious to see some other films she's been in. I mean, hey, it's my channel. I'll do it if I want to. And besides, this one's in the public domain, so I can use generous film clips without having to fear the dreaded copyright claim. And as it turns out, this was a great film. I really enjoyed this one a lot, and it was worth checking out. So the film opens up with a dictionary being open and a narrator giving us the definition of the word impact. Well, that's different.
Impact. The force with which two lives come together. Sometimes for good, sometimes for evil.
So the film opens up, we're in an office building and there's a business conference taking place. The character of Walter Williams is played here by Brian Donlevy. He's this kind of big shot executive and he meets with his board about buying some factories. And after this he retires to his office where he looks at some jewelry that he has just purchased for his wife. So he soon heads home to see his wife Irene. She's played by actress Helen Walker. He tells her all about the deal that he's made, and as he's doing so, he reenacts his loud, dramatic speech. Now, outside, the housekeeper, Sue Lin, is played by actress Anna May Wong. She overhears and assumes that the two are actually arguing, but all he's doing is just sharing how he had to speak to his board, and it was, a little bit animated. In fact, as he's talking, he accidentally knocks over a vase, which breaks. And this Sue Lin hears that as well. These details will be important later on in the film, but everything is actually okay. Walter just accidentally knocked the vase over. They have a laugh about it. Well, he heads to town to finalize the deal. But once he leaves, Irene calls up another guy. Uh-oh, she has plans to have Walter killed. Well, Walter calls back home and Irene suspiciously tells him that she had offered for him to give a ride to her cousin, a guy named Jim, who's nearby, that he is stranded in Sausalito. Well, Jim is here. He's played by actor Tony Barrett. And right off, you can tell that he's a creep. But Walter agrees to give him the drive, and they have a somewhat cold ride together. You can tell Walter seems just a tad suspicious of him. Maybe doesn't quite trust him. They stop to get some food, and Walter goes in, but Jim says he's going to stay in the car to sleep. So Walter goes in, tries to make a call, and he can't reach Irene. But meanwhile, this Jim guy lets some air out of the tire. Uh-oh. They resume their trip. But Jim, he let the air out of the tire so it would slowly leak. That gives them an excuse to stop on the way as they're driving along this kind of mountainous region. And as they pull over and work on the tire, Jim uses this opportunity to club Walter with a tire iron. He then tosses him down the side of a cliff, but then realizes he never got the key to the car. Whoops. So he has to go down and check the body to retrieve it. So he goes, gets it, and then he gets back in the car, drives off, all proud of himself and not really paying attention. We get to an awesome collision scene with a tanker truck. And hey, it's late 1940s practical effects with models, I know, but I love it. So Walter wakes up. He's in bad shape. He's got some blood on his head. He's rubbing the back of his head, and he's hearing these flashbacks of voices going on in his head. Poor guy, he staggers back up the hill, and whenever there's a head injury in a film like this, I'm always hoping they go get it looked at right away. Maybe get some ibuprofen or something, but they rarely do. For instance, I just watched Burgess Meredith in the movie Streets of Chance, where he had a head injury there, and he didn't do anything about it. Interestingly enough, I did a word search in my big text document where I keep all my film review notes, and the theme of head injury seems to be a very frequent occurrence in these old films. I don't know, an overused plot device maybe, but whatever. Walter staggers back up the hill and he gets into the back of a moving truck and then just kind of collapses exhausted. Now we cut to Lieutenant Tom Quincy, who is a police investigator. He's played here by Charles Coburn, the legendary actor from films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. And he shows up to speak with Helen, who has been asked not to be disturbed. But the lieutenant shows the badge and goes to speak with her and breaks the news that her husband is presumed dead. But due to the impact and the fire and the explosion, the death was instantaneous and there were no remains found. Now, she puts on a convincing act of being upset, and he leaves, but oh, that devious look she gives.
If there's nothing more you need me for, Lieutenant, I
think I understand. And may I say you've taken this with a great deal of courage. Good night, Mrs. Williams.
So we cut back to Walter. Now he's riding in the back of the moving truck, and when the truck finally stops so the guys can get out at this diner, he hops off undetected, and he finds a newspaper that's reporting him dead. And for the life of me, at this point, he looks like an injured Bruce Willis. Is it just me? Anyhow, Helen is at home, and she gets some important telegraphs. Telegraphs. I love old films. Well, devious lady that she is, she's thinking that maybe they're going to be from her lover character, Jim. Because remember, she's not actually aware that he was roasted on the highway. She thinks that he's still out there somewhere. The telegraphs, however, are all just sympathy messages, and she just disregards them. Oh, she's a character. Well, Lieutenant Quincy shows up again to ask Helen more questions, specifically about her husband. You know, if he drank, what kind of driver he was, things like that. And Helen just answers as best she can. Now, Walter, meanwhile, makes it to a phone and tries to reach the family of this Jim character, you know, the guy that clubbed him on the head and was roasted in the fire. But when he calls, the woman who answers has no idea who this Jim is. Now, Walter's starting to put things together. There's the dramatic music as he realizes he's been had. The poor guy. But believe it or not, a kindly station worker sees him and refers him to a doctor. So he will be one of the first characters in these old films to actually go and get his head injury taken care of. Amazing. So Walter sees Dr. Bender, who helps fix him up, but he gives him a warning about his concussion. Yeah. Now, the doctor, by the way, was played by Erskine Sanford of Citizen Kane fame. That was pretty cool. So Walter keeps reading the papers, and yeah, he's put it all together now. His baby did him wrong.
Walter Williams' beautiful widow, who by her own request sat alone in the family alcove during the service. Smart. Someone might have caught her licking her chops.
So we cut back to the movers, and they've discovered Walter's suitcase, and they turned it over to the police. Now, when the police take a look at it, it clues them into something is fishy, because they find prints on it that don't match up. Now, Lieutenant Quincy has some suspicions, and he goes to speak to Helen again, telling her that they found prints of a mysterious hitchhiker, and that they're going to try to track him down. Now, she plays along with this, but seems a tad alarmed here, because Quincy drops that when they get a name, they might find someone with a motive, and then they'll be back to ask her more questions about it. She goes walking with a nice little bit of location footage of late 1940s San Francisco. I always love that in these old films. And the cops are kind of trailing her. And she goes to try to send a Western Union telegram, but suspecting a tail, she doesn't send anything suspicious, kind of changes her message at the last minute. And she manages to throw off the detectives. For now. So we cut to the small town of Larkspur, Idaho, where Walter has arrived. Now he goes by a mechanic shop and he sees someone working on a car, just banging away at it. Like, if I ever worked on a car, that'd probably be my approach as well. So he makes a comment about it and then realizes that the mechanic is actually a woman named Marcia, played by the gorgeous actress Ella Raines, of the John Wayne film Tall in the Saddle. Well, she's the one hammering away at this car, and Walter offers to help. She's a little skeptical of the guy at first, but ultimately, when he gets it working, she's grateful and offers him a Coke. And when he's able to help her Uncle Ben with his car, she offers him a job, and he reluctantly accepts. He's invited to dinner and meets with Mrs. Peters. It's her mom. It's Mae Marsh was the actress, and they have a nice old-fashioned dinner together, with the roast beef slices and veggies. And it's here that they offer Walter a place to stay with them, which seems a little sudden, but hey, remember, it's the 1940s and people were more trusting back then. So he's got a job now, working on cars, and we can see that Marcia has an interest in him. But he's understandably trying to keep a low profile for a while, and maybe work to get his life back together. But how long can he maintain this cover? Anyhow, check out her cool Princess Leia hair in this scene. So Walter's working on cars, and he's able to help a young family out, Ed and Jane, with getting their car working. And look how they just zoom off, holding their baby in the front seat. The 1940s. So it's been 3 months of him working there, and he offers to take Marcia to the movies with Ed and Jane, and she's all for it. So we cut to the newspaper guys announcing that Irene is now being held on murder charges. Reporter Sheila Graham, played briefly by actress Sheila Graham, gives us a recap while wearing an amazing hat. Now, Irene meets with her attorney, who seems like a total sleaze. He gives her a dire warning that things could get bad if this Jim character would be to show up, but he implies that drastic measures could be taken. Again, no one knows at this point that he's been roasted away by the crashed tanker truck. They think it was Walter that died.
Now, if we can get to trial before Torrance is found, they'll never get a conviction. But
But what?
if he shows up, we may have to fry him.
Oh, no.
Let's not cross that bridge until we have to. But if it comes to a choice, we're not going to burn, are we?
Well, Walter and Marcia are walking together, and he's planning to head back to San Francisco, but she tells him how fond everybody is in town of him. And the music swells all romantically, and there's something there. But Marcia has yet to find out all of Walter's backstory, about the loopy wife who wanted him dead and all of that stuff. Now, Walter is still keeping up with the papers, and he sees the articles that police are still seeking Jim Torrance, the guy they think killed him. And he hangs on to all these articles. But what is he planning? Well, we cut to the end of a church service, and Walter and Marcia go walking in the country. And it's here that Walter finally reveals that he's married. He's still dealing with the pain of it, but Marcia seems to be understanding and pleading with him to just try to move on. And the scene is interrupted as the fire alarm signals. I guess Walter is now a volunteer fireman, and there's a little bit of silliness as everybody scrambles off to put out the fire. So a little bit later, Walter brings some canned peaches to Mrs. King, but she looks at him warily. Apparently, she found the newspaper clippings and knows what's going on now. Walter makes the decision to move on, and even when Marcia shows up to plead with him not to close out everyone, he's insistent. But he's not going back to his wife for justice. He's just moving on. Try and forgive me, he says. While sitting at the train station, Walter keeps hearing these voices replay in his head, and he finally decides to do the right thing. He heads back to San Francisco, and he meets with the detective Quincy and Captain Callahan, played by actor Robert Warwick, who I caught not long ago in the film In a Lonely Place with Humphrey Bogart. And Walter brings Marcia along to testify to his time that was spent in the town of Larkspur. And it's here that they call in Helen, and she finally discovers that her husband is actually alive. Oh, what a scene.
Mrs. Williams, we have news for you.
Really? I can scarcely wait.
It seems it was Torrance who was in the car when it crashed.
So after Helen gets her bearings about her, I thought she was going to pass out, but she doesn't. She immediately turns all nasty and blames Walter for the murder. And she is excellently played here as a character, by the way, just a really nasty femme fatale. She even makes up stuff about him throwing the vase at her. You remember the one that he had accidentally knocked over earlier? Now, what is suspicious to the detectives is that Walter hid out for several months instead of coming right back, and they want to hold on to him as well. So he's put into lockup. The captain sends Quincy out. And you know, I can't stop using clips from this film because it was just so good. I love this little scene right as he leaves.
But murder's out of character for him. There's a few pieces missing somewhere.
There might be in Idaho, if it's not too much out of character for you to get going.
You're going to miss me, Cal, when I retire next year. Maybe I'll join Private Eye and solve your cases for you.
So Walter is still in lockup. Marcia comes to visit with him, and she still believes in him. Now, Lieutenant Quincy arrives and shows the clippings from the paper to Walter. And after encouraged by Marcia to work with him, Walter finally opens up with all the details. So Quincy and Marcia revisit the crime scene, and unable to find the tire iron that had been used to club Walter, they go after the character Sue Lin to get her story. They go to Chinatown, and they meet with the character Ah Sing, who's played by legendary character actor Philip Ahn. I love the dialogue at this scene, too. You know, Quincy's like, "Do you speak English?" And he calmly says, "Also French, Italian, and Hebrew." I love it. And he says that Sue Lin is not there, but we, the viewer, can see that she's hiding and listening in. So we cut to the trial, and the prosecutor, actor William Wright, is just really tearing into Walter. Walter's defense is played by Art Baker, who I've seen in films like Hitchcock's Spellbound, and he's doing his best with the defense, but it's not looking very good for Walter here. The court evidence seems to be growing stronger against Walter. But as we near the very end of the film, will Walter be found innocent? Will his evil wife get away with her sinister scheme? Will he ever know true love with Marcia? And will Sue Lin change her mind and testify? Well, no spoilers. You're going to have to watch the exciting conclusion for yourself. So some closing thoughts about this excellent film. Impact was released in 1949 by United Artists. It was directed by Arthur Lubin and written by Dorothy Davenport and Jay Dratler. And this was an interesting one in that it had elements of crime stories I've seen, you know, such as the scheming wife, the trusting husband, the sinister boyfriend, the big twist during the murder attempt. But yet it also took a nice break in the story to tell about a guy on the mend who just sort of blends into a small town as he makes his recovery, finding a new family, maybe even some romance. And it concludes as a court drama with a likable detective character who's really out there driven to figure things out. I've seen this described in some reviews as a B movie, and yet I think it's much better than that. I really enjoyed everything about this film. This is the first film I've seen with actor Brian Donlevy, and I thought he was great here. You know, and initially, he seems like he's just a boring businessman talking to executives in his office, but as things start going sour for him, we see a genuine side to this guy, that he is a broken, sobbing man over his unfaithful wife, and he's basically just trying to put his life back together again. I also appreciate how, even when the character Martha was clearly interested in him romantically, he seems resolved to do the noble thing and to just move on. You know, he's still married to the evil woman, but he sees what's happening, decides just to leave town. And that's quite a challenge, considering that it's actress Ella Raines. Now, as mentioned earlier, I found out about this film while looking at the filmography of Helen Walker and decided to give it a shot, and I thought she was wonderful here. As far as her performance, she's just amazing as this scheming, manipulative wife, trying to get her husband killed, and then kind of adapting to the changing situation as one thing after another happens to kind of spoil her plans. And she plays the role here with the same cool, calculating efficiency that she did with her character in Nightmare Alley. I thought she was an excellent actress who was just great in this movie. I'd actually like to see more of her films. And I thought Charles Coburn was also excellent as the lieutenant who is investigating this crime. You know, I was reading about him, and I love how the Internet Movie Database describes him as, quote, a cigar-smoking, monocled, swag-bellied character actor known for his Old South manners and charm. That's awesome. He brought a lot to this film as the detective who senses something is odd about the events of the crime, and he wants to dig deeper to figure it all out. And later in the film, when his character pairs up with Martha, I thought there was a fun bit of chemistry as the two of them go investigating together. And of course, I must mention actress Ella Raines, who was a lovely romantic interest to Walter's character in this film. And she is just a wonderful character who is invested in Walter, really supportive of him, and figuring out what's the deal with that chip on his shoulder. And I thought her dedication to helping him get things straightened out, even traveling with him to San Francisco and believing in him all the way, was very touching. I thought it was a great character. Now, my 3 fans who watch my reviews know that I love location footage in old movies. It's almost like the film is giving us a little window into the real world of the past. And there were some nice, if brief, location shots around the San Francisco area that were captured here. By the way, why is it always San Francisco in these old crime films? There's the Fairmont and Mark Hopkins hotels, San Francisco's Chinatown, Sausalito, and Larkspur. By the way, Larkspur was a place in California, but it was used as the fictional Larkspur, Idaho in the film. The building that served as the exterior of Sue Lynn's apartment is still there at 834 Washington Street in San Francisco. Looks a little bit different, but it's still there. I was able to locate it with Google Maps searching. It was also interesting to me to see some of the corporate brands that were featured, you know, either named or just shown visually, like Western Union, Belkin's, Coca-Cola, etc. You know, it's something I'm more familiar with modern films, maybe not so much with older movies, and I thought that was cool to see those brands mentioned in this film. Well, Impact is in the public domain. I've seen it on YouTube as well as on Prime for free, so what are you waiting for? It's an excellent film. It's one worth checking out.